Imagine a city divided, a world at odds, and a wall that stood as a symbol of it all. The Berlin Wall, a monument to division, was more than just a slab of concrete. It was the physical embodiment of the ideological rift that cleaved the world into East and West during the chilling years of the Cold War. As World War II came to a close in 1945, the victors carved up the spoils, with Berlin, the capital of the defeated Germany, split between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union. The city became a microcosm of the global divide, with East Berlin under Soviet control and West Berlin under the governance of the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. By 1961, East Germans were fleeing to the West in droves, seeking the freedoms and opportunities that were denied to them under Soviet rule. To stem the exodus, the East German government, under the watchful eye of the USSR, erected a wall that snaked through the heart of Berlin. It was a hasty construction of barbed wire and concrete, but it was formidable enough to keep East Germans in and Western ideas out. The Berlin Wall, stretching over 100 miles, stood as a stark symbol of the ideological divide that characterized the Cold War. It was not just a wall, it was the Iron Curtain made manifest. The barrier demarcated more than just territory, it delineated two different ways of life, two contrasting visions of society, and two opposing ideologies. Life on either side of the wall was a study in contrast. While West Berlin became a bustling metropolis, a beacon of capitalism and democracy, East Berlin languished under the austere and repressive regime of the German Democratic Republic. This was more than just a wall, it was a physical emblem of a world divided. Yet as we will see, walls, no matter how strong, how tall, or how imposing, cannot suppress the human yearning for freedom, for unity, and for a world without divisions. But what was life like living in the shadow of such a symbol? Let's delve into this era, a time when the Berlin Wall wasn't just a symbol but a stark, tangible reality. The wall, an imposing concrete barrier, dissected more than just the city of Berlin. It tore apart families, friends, and loved ones. The wall was a constant reminder of this separation, a daily reality that was just as emotional as it was physical. Imagine for a moment, waking up each day to the sight of this towering, graffiti-strewn barrier. It was a grim testament to the division of a nation, of a world. It was an ever-present symbol of the Cold War, the East versus the West, communism against capitalism. On the eastern side, life was marked by a sense of isolation. The wall restricted people's movements, controlled by a regime that monitored every aspect of their lives. Freedom of speech, of thought, of expression were not rights, but privileges. And these were privileges that were rarely, if ever, granted. On the other side of the wall in West Berlin, life was starkly different. This side of the city thrived. It was vibrant and dynamic. Its people enjoyed freedoms that their Eastern counterparts could only dream of, and it was these dreams that led to daring and often dangerous escape attempts. Stories of people using homemade hot air balloons, digging tunnels, and even crashing through the wall in modified vehicles are a testament to the human spirit's indomitable will for freedom. But these were not just stories. They were real-life tales of bravery and desperation. Each one was a testament to the lengths people would go to reclaim their freedom, to reunite with loved ones, to simply live a life unencumbered by an oppressive regime. Despite the stark contrasts and the daily hardships, there was also resilience. People found ways to cope, to adapt, to keep their spirits alive. They held on to hope, to the belief that one day, the wall would fall and freedom would come. For those living it, this was a reality marked by separation and a longing for freedom. Yet beneath the surface, change was brewing. As the Berlin Wall stood as an imposing symbol of division, a series of political and social shifts began to shake the foundation of the Cold War era. At the forefront of these changes was Mikhail Gorbachev, who assumed leadership of the Soviet Union in the mid-80s. Gorbachev introduced policies of glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, or restructuring, which aimed to reform the rigid Soviet system. These reforms signaled a shift from the oppressive regime, sparking a glimmer of hope for change. Meanwhile, in Poland, a significant movement was taking shape. The Solidarity movement, led by Lech Walesa, emerged as a powerful force of resistance against the communist rule. This independent labor union represented a defiance of the status quo, demonstrating to the world that the desire for freedom and democracy was alive and well in Eastern Europe. Yet it wasn't just in Poland where the winds of change were blowing. Across Eastern Europe, a wave of protests began to ripple. From the peaceful Monday demonstrations in East Germany to the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, citizens were standing up and voicing their discontent. The people of these nations were no longer willing to accept the life dictated by the Iron Curtain. These collective movements and political shifts led to an environment ripe for change. The rigid structures that had defined the Cold War era were beginning to buckle under the pressure of the people's desire for freedom and the leaders' willingness for reform. It was a time of uncertainty, but also a time of hope. The world watched as the Cold War's icy grip began to thaw. The Berlin Wall, once a symbol of enduring division, was not immune to these changes. Despite its imposing presence, the wall was not impervious to the powerful forces of change sweeping across Europe. The literal and metaphorical cracks were beginning to show. The wall was beginning to crack, and a wave of change was about to sweep across Europe. The stage was set for one of the most significant events of the 20th century, an event that would not only change the face of Germany, but also the world. Then came the night that changed everything. On November 9, 1989, the world held its breath as Berlin prepared for an event that would resonate across the globe. The evening began with an air of uncertainty. Rumors were swirling, whispers of change echoed through the city. As the sun set, an atmosphere of anticipation enveloped Berlin. Crowds began to gather, their eyes fixed on the imposing structure that had divided their city for more than a quarter of a century. As the hours ticked by, the crowd swelled. A ripple of excitement passed through the throng as the first brave souls stepped forward. Armed with nothing more than hammers and chisels, they began to chip away at the wall. Each strike was a blow against years of division and repression. Each piece falling away symbolized a step towards freedom. The world watched as the wall, once an unassailable symbol of the Cold War, was reduced to rubble. Every clang of metal on concrete echoed around the globe, a chorus of liberation ringing out in the night. It was a symphony of defiance, of unity, of hope. The wall was not just being dismantled, it was being devoured by the people it had sought to control. And then, in the early hours of the morning, the impossible happened. The wall, the insurmountable barrier that had stood for decades, fell. The city, so long divided, was united once more. The jubilation was palpable, strangers embraced, tears of joy flowed freely, and the air was filled with the sound of celebration. It was a moment of collective triumph, a testament to the indomitable spirit of the people. The fall of the Berlin Wall was not just a historical event, it was a human triumph. It was a demonstration of the power of collective action, of the unquenchable desire for freedom that resides in the heart of every individual. In a moment of collective jubilation, the wall had fallen, and with it, an era had ended. The fall of the Berlin Wall was more than just a moment in history, it was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter that opened with the reunification of Germany, an event that seemed a mere dream just a few years earlier. Overnight, families separated for decades were reunited, friends embraced each other, and a nation divided by ideology came together as one. But the ripples of this monumental event extended far beyond the borders of Germany. The fall of the Berlin Wall signaled a seismic shift in the geopolitical landscape. It was a beacon of hope, illuminating the way for the end of the Cold War. This was not just about the dismantling of a physical barrier. It was about tearing down the ideological divide that had polarized the world for almost half a century. The collapse of the wall sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in Moscow, marking the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union. Yet it was more than a political victory. It was a triumph of the human spirit over oppression, a testament to the indomitable will of people yearning for freedom. The fall of the wall was a message broadcast to every corner of the globe. No barrier, no matter how formidable, can withstand the collective power of people united in their pursuit of freedom and justice. In the aftermath, Europe was forever changed. The Iron Curtain was lifted, and nations once shrouded in the shadow of Soviet influence began their journey towards democracy. The fall of the wall paved the way for the enlargement of the European Union, fostering an era of increased cooperation and peace in the region. Today, the legacy of the Berlin Wall is a stark reminder of a divisive past and the transformative power of unity. It stands as a testament to the fact that walls, both physical and ideological, eventually crumble when confronted with the universal human desire for freedom. The fall of the wall was not just the end of an era, but the start of a renewed hope for a world united.